Hello, it's early and my backlight died, so it's pretty dark in here. It is 10/10/2025, or as I like to call it, Rennie Tin Tin Day. You probably don't know who Rin Tin Tin is, but that's my dad joke about today's date. You can look up Rin Tin Tin if you want to, but I digress. This is a book review for Helen Keller, The Story of My Life. Very short book. It's 75 pages long. You can whip through this very quickly. And I'm going to preface this by saying I'm going to put some questions in here that are not meant to offend anyone at all because people that are disabled or challenged, I don't know what the politically correct term is right now, but they have tons of value. And I'm sure that Helen Keller was very talented and intelligent, but I also have questions about some of the claims made in this book that are just perplexing to me, and I'm going to go into it a little bit here. The first thing that I didn't understand almost immediately was this was written so well that I thought, well, with all the challenges of being deaf and blind, I could see somebody writing, but how could they be so grammatically just very, very good without making any errors or anything? I think somebody must have proofed slash edited this because it's like written perfectly. So then we go into the assistant that she had, and I think her name was, what was it, Anne Hathaway or something like that. I'm probably misquoting it. I should probably look it up. Well, I'm not going to do it right now, but you could look up who her assistant was. It might say it on the back of the Anne Sullivan. I got it wrong. Anne Hathaway is probably somebody else of importance that I've crossed over incorrectly. But anyway, this person, Anne Sullivan, I'm thinking would have to like live with her 24/7 almost to teach her to understand language, much less get her to the point that she's able to write books and things of that nature. And the thing that I was questioning is the average person doesn't have access to that kind of training. Who are her parents? They must be rich. So I looked that up. And sure enough, her parents were very well to do prior to the Civil War. And they were in the South, affiliated with the Confederacy. After the war, they lost some of their money, but they were still pretty well to do. And that is the problem I have with this story. Because you know, currently, that people of influence can get their children into any college they want to if they spend enough money or if they do enough political favors and things of this nature. And the other question I had is why did she end up at Harvard and was, I guess, allowed to have this Anne Sullivan there with her at school? She went to another college first, I guess, and then transferred over into Harvard. But, you know, the average person surely couldn't get into Harvard even back then. You had to have some financial assistance, I'm sure. But what's the point? I mean, I don't understand what the motivation was to get a person with that many challenges into that institution. And it was clear from the writings that there wasn't a lot of people at the school that were trying to assist. It was basically her one main person, it seemed like, that was assisting. And where it really got weird for me, where she's talking about taking calculus classes, and I'm sitting there going, what? How many people? Well, first off, let's start it this way. If you're not like an engineering student, you probably never taken a calculus course. So you probably have no idea how difficult calculus is. And most people will never even see calculus. So when they read in this book about a blind deaf person taking calculus, to them it's just another subject, probably like, whatever, biology or something like that. But it's not. Calculus is got to be the most single difficult subject in college. If it isn't, I'd be shocked to find out what is. There's higher difficulties of calculus as you go, but even the first rung of calculus, if there's something harder than calculus, I'm not aware what it would be. And how a person that's deaf and blind could even conceive of the concepts in calculus, right? I don't understand how they could do that, because it's so difficult for a person with all their faculties. And her assistant, it seems like to me, would very possibly have the access and, what's the word, the motivation to write these books for this story to be proposed to the world. And I'm not sure what the reason would be if the parents somehow financially gained from this story, because back then, you got to understand, they didn't have the internet or nothing. They had to, use different avenues to get people to hear of stories like this. It seems like to me it could have been another revenue stream for the family that were trying to rebuild their wealth a little bit more. Because I looked online about some of these claims. They even had a claim that she was flying a plane. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, you've got a blind deaf person flying a plane. Clearly the pilot that's sitting with her is really flying a plane. You can't have a blind deaf person flying an airplane because they can't see what's going on. What are you going to translate from one person to the next? Hey, look, there's something up there, turn right. What is the point? I just don't understand what the point is. Why do you need a deaf blind person flying a plane? Unless you're trying to prove something, and I can't figure out what it is. Maybe you're trying to prove that there's value to a person that's deaf and blind, because people back then might have thought they're useless. Maybe. But it would only work out if you've got rich parents that can get you into an airplane with somebody that's willing to co-opt the story. Because clearly, again, the pilot is flying the plane. And again, I don't believe that you could teach a deafblind person calculus. I just don't believe that. I think that Anne Sullivan, if anything, was doing the work and then describing it to her with her little hand-to-hand things, because it would be hard enough to come up with the English language in this kind of a situation, much less all the strange, weird symbols that you're going to need in calculus. What are you going to do? Create a brand new language for that? I just don't understand it. The other thing I don't understand, very beginning, she went deaf and blind earlier than 2 years of age. So this describes it very early in the book about what happened to her. And then it says, but as she's older and Anne Sullivan is describing things to her, she remembers a lot of those things from before she lost her sight and her hearing. And I'm sitting there going, I don't remember anything from when I was not even 2 years old yet. I don't think most people have memories before 2 years old. How can you remember stuff from prior to 2 years old? Maybe it's different for a person that was deaf and blind, if their references, because they're so stunted, that maybe somehow it comes back. I don't know. But the claim to me just seems bizarre, because I can barely remember stuff when I was 4. I know there's other people that claim they remember things when they're 3. But less than 2 years old, I think it was 19 months. So it was like a year and a half years old. You're going to remember things and then carry them on forward when someone's describing it. It just doesn't make sense to me. It sounded like Anne Sullivan was writing this stuff and trying to explain it away. So then there's a section in there where it talks about her first writings as a child and how she had heard several stories been read to her, and then she kind of fraudulently copied them in essence in a class. And then the teacher kind of called her to the carpet about, hey, you copied something that has already been published and it's not right, and da 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 da. But the whole section that described that almost seemed like Anne Sullivan was being like somebody had accused her of doing this stuff for Helen Keller, and she's like doing this kind of a weird confessional of her own activity. That's the vibe I got out of it. Now, again, I'm not saying that Helen Keller didn't learn how to read and write. I'm not saying that she didn't understand the English language. As we go on later into the book, it's more or less like a resume where she's just going, okay, I like this book, I like this book, I like this book, and why I like this book. And some of the revelations about those books were so thought out and deep. Again, it just made me wonder, how do you get that interpretation if you're blind and deaf and have not had the level of experiences that people that can see and hear do? So I felt like a lot of this was kind of maybe overstated. I'm not saying she can't read or write or enjoy literature or things of that nature, but I think some of it was a little bit over the top, um, politicized, perhaps. I mean, we know nowadays there's a lot of people online making crazy claims for views, on YouTube and social media and stuff like that. This seemed like the same kind of thing, but back then. And it seemed like a family of influence that's paying to get this story to roll around the globe. And I looked online. I'm not the only person that had doubts about this. There is a big community that believes this whole thing is not true. And again, I'm not one of those people. I'm not saying that none of this is true. I just find a lot of it suspect, is the way I'll say it. Because it sounded to me like Anne Sullivan might be writing this and using Helen Keller as a prop. Now, I've never met the person, obviously. She's long gone. And she quotes other authors that, like Mark Twain said she's basically a genius and this and that. Maybe he met her. I don't know. She gave him props in this book. So, it could be appreciative repayment for giving him good props in her book. I don't know. I don't understand a lot of stuff in this book, and it's short, obviously, and again becomes like a resume where you're just telling people about things that you like and stuff, and which I guess anybody does that. I write, not write, but review a lot of books and tell people the books I like too. So it's the same kind of vibe, but doing calculus when you're blind and deaf, I don't know, man.